everybody, welcome back to Experience Points, a less formal, more laid-back sort of video series where I talk about games that I've played a bit of but have not yet finished. And I got to get hands-on with something classics, Quartet, a little bit early. Not Quintet, it's different. Quartet. Quartet is the latest game from Something Classic. You might know Something Classic from my review of their game Shadows of Adam several years ago. That was one of the very first indie RPGs that I ever did a full review of, and I think I'm gonna need to do a full review of this one at some point, but I just wanted to get my first impressions out there because the game just released today. I'm feeling like this is gonna be a pretty big one. Just based off of my first impressions and talking to some friends about it, and they're super excited about it, and people who have played the demo are really excited about it. So just to quickly lay down some groundwork, the game is launching on PC to start with, on platforms like Steam, Good Old Games, Epic Game Store, that sort of thing. However, they are planning on console versions coming out later in 2025, specifically like for the Nintendo Switch and for PlayStation. Switch 2 is kind of a probably not for the time being, but that's okay until Switch 2 gets their game key card stuff sorted out. The game's going to be about $20 here to start with, and I think based on what I've played so far, it's going to be worth every single penny. The game is going to be a pretty standard kind of feeling turn-based RPG for the most part, but it's going to be pretty fast-paced. The game's going to have a lot of the same battle mechanics as Shadows of Adam. The big defining feature of this is going to be swapping characters in and out from the back row, and the return of the AP system from Shadows of Adam. So for instance, every turn, character's going to recover maybe 10% of their AP by default. You can choose to guard, and that will decrease the damage that you receive and increase the amount of AP that you recover. Some of your skills might use like 35 AP from that, and then you can use that several times, and each turn you recover 10 back, but then eventually you might run out and you might have to guard or do a regular attack. Guarding, you'll gain back 20 AP. Doing a regular attack, you'll still gain back another 10. So it really does encourage you to actually use your AP, and because they're all kind of based off of like percentages, it's not the sort of situation where like you have spells that become less effective over time. You're actually going to end up with a bunch of different spells, a bunch of different abilities, and they're going to remain useful and relevant throughout the entirety of the game. Just like in Shadows of Adam, they've done it before, and they're doing it again, and it's so much fun. So while it has a lot of the similar aesthetics of a very old Super Nintendo RPG, the gameplay feels really unique and fresh to this series. It features like a turn queue over on the right, and you can delay or cancel people's turns based off of, you know, what you choose to do. You can like decrease their speed, and that decreases the frequency of their turns. You can increase your own speed and get more turns. So it's kind of trailsy if you're familiar with that system. And it definitely encourages you to be more like aggressive, spam those spells because it makes a big difference. Also, the exploration so far through this game has been phenomenal. There's a bunch, just a myriad of different scenes and landscapes and stuff in Shadows of Adam if you ever gave that a shot, which you definitely should. This is sort of like Something Classic's follow-up. Shadows of Adam was like a goofy, quirky, kind of funny game. This does not feel like it's going to be goofy and quirky and kind of, well, maybe a little bit of humor every once in a while, but it feels like they're taking themselves a little bit more seriously at this point, you know, and just kind of refining themselves and tell a really interesting story perspective. And I think that they're really delivering on that. The game opens up with 4 distinct but intertwining stories that can be played in basically any order that you want, and it follows not just 4, but 8 main characters. So you'll be playing through different stories, starting with the character that you pick from this starting screen, and eventually you'll meet up with a second person who joins you in your campaign. And then all of these stories, according to Quartet's developers, it's not a spoiler, they will converge at some point. I don't know exactly how that will take place, but I'm looking forward to that actually happening in my playthrough. This game's going to include things like train robberies on the Wild West, hinting at a government conspiracy, magical vision from a deck of tarot cards, deadly airships attacking Imperial frontiers, and an unlikely hero discovering magical power. Collectively, there's going to be those 8 protagonists uncovering a centuries-old conflict that reshaped their world and must decide the fate of magic itself. I started off playing as Alexandra, or Alex, and her brother in this sort of 1900s-ish big city. I don't know, for some reason I imagined mobsters, gangsters, but it seems like there's some underbelly in this side of the town where they're living in the city, and her brother's mixed into it, and she's kind of getting dragged into it, and then she discovers this deck of magical tarot cards that's pretty wild. And now with this inclusion of the different characters and different story paths kind of doing their own thing, it reminds me a lot of games like Live Alive or Octopath Traveler, except I'm pretty sure, I haven't talked to these guys about it yet, but I'm pretty sure that they're going to ensure that these characters actually meet each other and interact throughout the story. Alex's story, who's just such a fun character, they definitely have a story that actually gets them talking to Juna, and Juna is pronounced with a J in this game. There's also like a Wild West kind of section of the game when you're playing through, what was her name? Cordelia. She's such a neat character. She's super into law, but she got blacklisted, so she had to leave the city to make a name for themselves out on the frontier, as it were, and start taking down Wild West bad guys as soon as they start leaving the city, after they take a run along the top of a train. It's just it's so cool. It's so tropey, but like the best kinds of tropes and the kinds you don't see often enough. And then you've also got this other guy that I played through a bit of. He's the guy that you play through if you do the demo. I don't know if the demo is still available or not, but there's a demo where you can play as one of the characters, and he's like a mage hunter. I was kind of expecting that to be like my big favorite one, honestly, but I think Alex's so far has to be my absolute favorite, quickly followed behind by Cordelia, in fact. So I don't know, and that's not even all of them. Now, I've played a mix of each of these so far from the main menu where you can choose your protagonist. Each one definitely feels unique and distinct, especially Alex's. Man, the soundtrack for that, Tyler Meyer from Something Classic, is like a child prodigy. I don't know how old he is, but he's probably a child prodigy. Just everything that he makes sounds so good, but especially the jazz featured in Alex's story is just, it steals the show. And while like I might be able to fault the game maybe for like a lack of like environmental sound effects or things like that, like I did for The Girl from Arcania, I at the same time wouldn't want to gild the lily, because the music is just the star of this show. So I wouldn't want all the extra effects to take away from just the beauty of the music coming through. In fact, when I was playing the game, I was like, okay, I don't want to like go through my menus or anything, because then I'll have the moving like the cursor sound effect that just gets in the way of the music. Like, I just gotta stand still and enjoy the music for a minute. It's so good. The playtime on this game is estimated to be about 20 hours for the main story, and maybe an additional like 5 hours of character-driven side quests that you can also do according to the developer. That for me tends to blow up though. My playthrough of Shadows of Adam may have been a record for like the longest playthrough. It's supposed to be like 12 hours. I think I played it for 20. So if that holds true for this game, I'm probably gonna put like a 50-hour playthrough into this thing. And I could go into other functions and things about the game that I absolutely adore, like the fact that there's a feature in the game where you can enable or disable the Oxford comma. So, I appreciate that they're looking out for people like me who need that Oxford comma, which is apparently used at 7 distinct points throughout the entirety of the game, according to a conversation that I had with Something Classic. And that's one of the other things that I'd really like to just mention here, is that Something Classic, they're a pretty small development team and publisher, and they are really active in the RPG loving communities. And that's one of my favorite parts about Something Classic just overall, is just how engaged they are with not just like their community and their players, but like they're talking to YouTubers, they're in our comments sections, they're interacting with people on the Twitch chats, the Twitch chats like I'm 90 years old or something. They're in it all together. They're working side by side with other indie developers. Like, what was the name of the game that has the big crossover episode coming out that's being developed by Critical Games? Infinite Alliance, that's the one. Something Classic is working with them, and they've got ties to just about every indie RPG that I absolutely love at this point in time, and all of the ones that I'm excited about on the horizon, like My Familiar, for instance. They are a pillar of the indie RPG community and the RPG loving community, and they're just really good at making games and helping people make games, and I think that you might really want to check them out if you haven't already. If you've been on the fence, this thing's gonna run on a potato. I mean, it'll run on a Nintendo Switch, for crying out loud. So anything more recent than that, like an Office PC that you got in 2011, is probably gonna knock it out of the park. There's really no reason not to try it out. According to minimum specs, it requires at least a 64-bit processor and Windows 7 or later, and an Intel i3 3220 and 2 gigs of RAM. Like that's the minimum specs. I'm guessing you could probably get by with a little less. And despite all of that, these games are still absolutely beautiful. They're obviously super lightweight because they're paying homage to such classic and timeless games like the Super Nintendo RPGs we all grew up loving, like the Final Fantasy IVs out there and Final Fantasy VI. My one hope and dream, in addition to like a physical version of this game, will be a vinyl, especially of Alex's music, just pressed, that I can just put on repeat in my living room. That would be ideal. Each of the stories that it's managed to tell me so far has really taken me by surprise, despite the tropes that I foresaw on the horizon. Sometimes the game embraced them. Sometimes the game would subvert your expectations. Cordelia has no place being in like a Wild West kind of situation based off of like my expectations of this character, for instance, but then they're just rocking it. It's just nice. It's fun to see everything coming together like this after waiting so long. Feels like I've been waiting on it since 2020 or so, maybe longer. I know that these unscripted videos aren't for everybody, but hey, that's at least how you know you're not getting some AI slop video, right? I'm a real human being making real thoughts about my actual experiences and not just, you know, synthesizing data. My favorite, synthesized data with synthesized voices and stilted discussions. Anyway, all of that is to say, just a quick thank you for supporting your homegrown organic YouTuber, and thank you for supporting such an awesome grassroots indie RPG developer like Something Classic with their now released title, Quartet. All right, have a good day, everyone.